What is going on, guys? Thank you for joining us on this evening on April 2nd, 2019, a Tuesday night. We really appreciate each and every one of you guys joining us, as always, live on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves and watching us here on YouTube, youtube.com/Mike Mercado2333 at the Mercado Airwaves Network. Thank you for following me on Twitter at mmercado2333. You can follow the network on Twitter as well at Mercado Airwaves. And we have a busy show today. The AAF is officially out of business. We have a struggling baseball team on the north and south side in Chicago. Some new odds came out. The over and unders in the NFL. John Oliver has a very interesting piece on HBO that we want to get to about the WWE. If you look at NBA Take-A-Thon, one of the awesome websites that you can do if you're a basketball fan. We're going to get to all that and so much more on this episode of Late Night Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado. Alrighty, guys, so why don't we go ahead and we'll start things off. Why don't we take a look at, we'll go into baseball first. How about that, okay? So let's go into what's happening over at the north and south side here in the city of Chicago. I have a few things lined up for each and every one of you guys. Why don't we go ahead and start off with this? So I found this on ESPN. This is from Sam Miller, and he gives us you can find it on ESPN.com, talking about what each baseball team has to do in order to succeed, what each team has to do to fail, and I thought it was a really interesting piece that we kind of just go over a little bit right here. And this is one of the things that we see to win the division is one of the big things that he talks about. But I find it interesting that he mentions, you know, the expectations, the difference between this Cubs team from, let's say, 2015 to where they're at right now. And I find it, you know, if you read the article, you can mention where he sees here that some predictions have them as the best team in baseball. Some have them as the worst team that under 500 and winning 84 games, or, you know, getting at 500 at 81 games. And, you know, he even talks about what's interesting is kind of his big things that you need to avoid or that are going to affect this Cubs team, and one of them is obviously Yu Darvish, and we'll get to all that in just a little bit, kind of the meat and potatoes of this Cubs conversation, and whether or not you should be worried about this team. And he even mentions Chris Bryant, and Chris Bryant has looked really good, and the thing has not been this Cubs offense. The Cubs offense has been fine. It's this right here. I mean, look at what happened in that 8-0 loss to the Cubs just yesterday. You have Zagunis with an error. How about Rizzo with 2 errors, Bodie with an error, Bryan with an error, and then you have the Cole Hamels grand slam. They have not played well. That bullpen has not been good. The starting pitching has not been good. And we're seeing it with Pedro Strop. We're seeing it with Carl Edwards. And by the way, for all you Cub fans who were wondering, Carl Edwards did get notice from Major League Baseball from the higher ups that his pitching mechanics are illegal and they will call balk on it. So where was that all spring training? Not just on the Cubs organization, but baseball. Like, we've seen him with those new mechanics, and you're going to now say on April 2nd that it's illegal 4 games into the season? That's kind of like baseball just can't get their heads out of their own asses sometimes. I'll never understand how dysfunctional that league is ran sometimes, but it's not good. And you know, there's some really fascinating numbers I saw. Chris Emma brought it up over on 670 The Score, and I wanted to bring up a little bit about their slash line of this lineup. And this is the Cubs 3-game slash line in Arlington when they were playing the Rangers, you know, before they got shut out in Atlanta. A slash line of 342, 433, and 570. And a weighted on-base percentage of 428. They scored 28 runs, basically. Let's say you're not into the analytics and sabermetrics and all that. They scored 28 runs in 3 games and lost 2 of those 3. That's hard to do. and that it doesn't look like a fluke. And I get it. Like, you don't want to overreact when it comes to so early in the baseball season. It is a marathon, but these games matter. And when your front office in Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer tell you October starts in March, well, it's already April and your March really sucked. So what are you going to do then? And this bullpen, it hasn't been good. We're talking about bullpen with a 10.3 ERA. Like, I don't care how good your offense is. You're not going to win games with that. And they've had to do a lot of work. I mean, look at that. Darvish outing was not good. And what's interesting is, I thought, because he struck out the first three batters of the game, or at least he had 3 strikeouts in the first inning, but he also walked 3 batters. So it was one of those weird things where he took 1 step forward, took 1 step back, took 1 step forward, took 1 step back. And then you're hearing excuses from Darvish. Then you're hearing about he was a little amped up to play against his former team. Well, what is the perfect situation for then you Darvish? I don't get that. And then if you're the front office, or if you're Joe Madden, or if you're anybody there, and you know the type of personality you're dealing with, right? Good or bad. You know what? It's your job to know who and what your players can do, what your employees can do, what your teammates can do, right? If that's not a position for him to succeed, why did you put him there? And at some point, he's going to be in uncomfortable situations, right? So it's up to him to get over that. And admittedly, it has to deal with his contract. I'm not a guy who likes to get into a player's pockets. Like, look, man, make your money. I wish somebody would pay me $56 million a year to do something. I wish I could get a $450 million contract like Mike Trout did. But that doesn't happen for me. But it happened for these guys. So I'm not going to hate on them in that case. But with that in mind, in the context of where they're at and where they rank and how much they get paid and whatnot, yeah, it matters that he doesn't perform the way he does and that you can't count on him. And the fact that you can't count on the starting rotation to go deep from what you've seen so far. And it's not like the computers are biased anything when they make these predictions about an older lineup that velocity has gone down, that has pitched a lot of games. You can see where a lot of these worries were coming from people. And I'm not trying to overreact. I mean, you could see behind me, like when I'm not on the things, I'm a Cub fan. But without a shadow of a doubt, there's no doubt that they should be playing better, but their problems are glaring. And this is the thing nobody wants to say, right? Or at least people have been saying, but there's nothing you can really do. They didn't spend for anything. They didn't bring anything in. So you could talk about how important, how you have to play with urgency. Every game matters. But if you do not give your team the assets it takes to win, to succeed, that's on you. I'm not saying you have to go get Craig Kimbrough, but your bullpen has problems. It's not, I'm not trying to hate on it, and it's not second-minding a manager or off-season bring-ins or transactions or signings or anything, but you didn't do anything. You're putting all your eggs in the basket that Darvish works out, that you get something out of Tyler Chatwood. And yes, you're right, Chris Bryant better work out because he's who you're putting your entire franchise on. That's fine. I get putting yourself on in that type of position. But you didn't help your bullpen out. And let's also talk about, the outfield. I like Albert Almora Jr. He's an awesome defender out there in center field. He's a pro's pro. But look at the fact that you can't play Kyle Schwarber against righties. You can't play him against lefties. The fact that Jason Hayward, again, a team leader and all the things that don't matter in a stat sheet doesn't help your team offensively. More often than not can be a liability. The Cubs have, if you're in Chicago and you've been a Cub fan, they have a lot of names you've known for a long time. They have a lot of, he could be, or he's on this level, can he get to this level? But their strengths come in the infield. And that doesn't happen a lot in baseball. And here's the interesting thing. Help isn't coming. Every young player that you like right now on somebody else's team is getting signed right now. Because it makes more sense to get signed right now. That the money is right there right now. If somebody's offering to you, you're not going to be stuck until March waiting to get a deal. So I think it's interesting that the front office talks about, it's time for people to step up, and there's no given right to Ian Happ being on the opening day roster or Kyle Schwarber being on the opening day lineup. But they have to be accountable too. And I don't care how big of a fan I am. You can only put so much blame on Joe Madden. You can only put so much blame on the players. If you're not bringing in the right guys to win, if you're paying the wrong guys, if you're bringing in the wrong guys, that's on you. That's on the front office. And then for the excuse to then be, well, we think we have what it takes to win here. It's not how, man. If it didn't work, again, I always use this example for like really bad teams like the Bulls when they're their front office. If you're running a multi-billion-dollar corporation like they are, and something didn't work for 4 quarters, or in this case since 2016, so 8 quarters of a business calendar, you're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again? That's what they're doing, essentially. You're going to keep going with Carl Edwards as one of your high-leverage pitchers. You're going to keep going with Pedro Strop as one of your high-leverage scenario pitchers. You're waiting and banking on Brandon Morrow. There's no guarantees there. And, I'm interested to see what the fan base does when it comes to this front office and if it doesn't work out this season. Because look, Milwaukee doesn't seem to be slowing down. And I think the MVP is playing in St. Louis. Hell, the MVP might be playing in Milwaukee again. This division didn't slow down. They got better. Did you get better on the north side? That's the question I keep asking. I was asking all offseason. Did you get better? Because I saw these teams get better. Did you? Now, in that same article, we also talk a little bit about what's going on the South Side at a heartbreaking loss thanks to the bullpen just a few nights ago for the White Sox. But the one thing I really just wanted to highlight here, they mentioned these are the teams kind of that are going to be on the bottom, and they're on the precipice of their rebuilds. But it all really comes down to health, and they say right there, how to avoid any type of pain. That's the greatest thing is Eloy has to play well, and he needs to stay healthy. Same thing with Moncada. Same thing with Anderson. All these guys. And the White Sox, I think the thing about the White Sox that's much more enjoyable to watch than, let's say, other years, especially, let's say for the Cubs right now. The Cubs right now, it's all results-orientated. It is. Like, as a Cub fan, and then somebody who does this, if you're looking at bottom line stuff for the Cubs. Did you win? Did you lose? Who looked good? Who looked bad? What are we doing moving forward? For the White Sox, it's much more open-ended. That loss sucked because you were dominating. The bullpen just blew up. But you were in that game. And that's going to happen more often than we want to admit this season. But that stuff matters. That's going to add up. That means something to be in those games, to playing against somebody like Cleveland, and it taking something like that for you to lose a game. So when we look back, it's not because your team is bad, that you don't have talent, that you're not on the field. It's because you made mistakes. Mistakes happen to young teams that aren't winning yet, but you will. And trust me, that White Sox team will be winning sooner or later. Cheers of a sip of a delicious, life-saving coffee. Thank you, guys. Hope you guys are enjoying your Tuesday night. It's April 2nd, 2019 here in the wonderful city of Chicago. We're talking a little bit of a rough start to both the Cubs and White Sox. Got a little heated there about the Chicago Cubs. Let us know your thoughts on the comment section below here on the Facebook page. And, all in all, I'm excited for the White Sox to have their home opener here on Thursday. That's going to be awesome. I wish I might look for tickets just because, Eloy, I'm a big Eloy fan. I don't care that I like Jose Quintana, but obviously looking back, Paul and I use shout out to friend of the show, Paul Shivari, but we always used to argue about that's one of the trades that it worked out for both sides. But definitely the White Sox probably ended up with the better of that trade. But speaking of Quintana, it was interesting when Yu Darvish had that short game, the 2 innings, and Quintana had to come in, and it's kind of a microcosm again. The urgency. But it's like it didn't work out. And that's going to be the problem. If you don't get the lucky breaks and you're kind of playing this way, it's not going to be good. Now, it is only the, 4th game of the season. And by the way, I hate that the Cubs are part of 3 home openers. So there's a lot of weird breaks in between. I'm actually going to the game on Sunday, April 14th to see Mike Trout. I think this is going to be the second time this is the second time I've seen Trout, so I'm excited for that. But no game today for the Cubs. I don't know if the White Sox playing. I probably should look that up before I went on the live video. But, just not fun stuff. Not fun stuff. It makes for great radio to talk about them blowing leads and giving up grand slams and Carl Edwards looking like garbage and not being able to get Pedro Strop the ball. But these are some serious problems for the Cubs. That's the worst part of your Cub fan is they better right the ship, and it doesn't look like any help is coming from the outside, so it's going to come totally from these guys, and it's not the offense. The worst part is the offense is going to score runs. But if this bullpen is not being able to hold leads and this starting rotation can't go deep into games, and they're already old and they don't throw hard, it's going to be a tough matchup for the Cubs in a very tough division. But you know what? We'll keep talking about the Cubs and White Sox over the next few days as the season really starts taking over. But we'll take a quick break here on Late Night from Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. Follow me on Twitter at mmercado2333. I'm on Instagram at MikeMercado2333. Follow the network on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. We're on YouTube. Search us at Mercado Airwaves Network. Play games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. WrestleMania is this weekend. We're going to talk about John Oliver in just a little bit later on the show, actually. But the main event is Ronda Rousey, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte Flair. Becky Lynch was on this show, and you were able to hear her interview ad-free and before anybody else on patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home to all our interviews ad-free, and you can hear before anybody else with athletes and celebrities. We come back, we talk AAF, NFL, and WrestleMania, including that John Oliver piece on HBO here on Late Night Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado. Alrighty, guys. So why don't we go ahead and jump into the AAF? This actually broke out earlier on today, and this is from an article from Action Network. Just 8 weeks after playing its first games, the Alliance of American Football will be suspending football operations by the end of Tuesday, according to sources. Tom Dundon effectively bought a majority stake in the league in mid-February, and with league announcing its commitment of $250 million. It later became clear that Dundon, who owns the Carolina Hurricanes, was funding the league on a week-to-week basis, with his approximate total commitment being $70 million to this point. After the deal with Dundon, sources say it became clear to league co-founders Charlie Ebersol and Bill Polian that Dundon's objectives were different from the original plan. We continue on. Ebersol and Polian's plan was to develop the league for 3 years on its own before becoming a feeder system to the NFL. Dundon, however, wanted to create the minor league relationship immediately and set out to use the leverage of folding the AAF to get a deal with the NFL Players Association to become better ensure a flow between leagues. And the article continues talking about the money investment. How about this for all you wrestling fans? And we're talking about the John Oliver talk in just a little bit. In January 2018, WWE Chairman Vince McMahon announced that he would bring back the XFL in name and logo only. The new league, which would be a gimmick-free version of what originally launched in 2001 and lasted for a year, is set to debut in 2020. Charlie Ebersol announced the AAF 2 months later, but leapt ahead of McMahon's timeline by launching his league right after this year's Super Bowl. The AAF's first week was widely heralded as games on Saturday on CBS averaged 3.25 million viewers, trumping ABC's broadcast of the Houston Rockets Oklahoma City Thunder NBA game, which got 2.6 million. The AAF had TV deals with CBS Sports, Turner Sports, and the NFL Network. While TV ratings remained somewhat respectable, attendance in many markets were lackluster, hovering around 10,000 reported fans per game. And then we get the rest from Darren Ravel over on the Action Network. The league got a public relations boost late last month when former Heisman Trophy winner Johnny Manziel got released from his Canadian Football League team and signed on with the AAF's Memphis Express. And actually, Johnny Manziel tweeted out talking about players that just collect your paychecks and move on, save your money because you're not going to get anything else from this league. But it ends with Dundon's decision to suspend operations comes with just 2 weeks remaining in the regular season and less than 4 weeks away from what would have been the first AAF championship slated to be broadcast on CBS. And it's very interesting how this just all kind of played out. I find it fascinating when people have so much money that can kind of just do whatever they want. But if your plan from day one, if you were the AAF, was to be a feeder system to the NFL, and you didn't have a deal with the NFL, then you didn't have a league. Like, that's the problem. It's like, cool, you had a TV deal. That's awesome. Like, that's most of the battle is getting the TV deal. But if you're looking to partner with somebody and your whole game plan is based off partnering with somebody, but you don't have said partner, then you don't have the idea. And that's why we don't have the AAF right now. And I do think Johnny Manziel, for whatever, I mean, rich kid that kind of got away with murder, whatever. He does make a good point. Whenever you're doing any type of venture like this, that's an upstart, that's a kickstart for all you. I know you guys are trying to get money advice from little old me, but he makes a point. Save your money. And I wonder now if the XFL is in a better spot. Because I think the XFL is just trying to do its own thing. Trying to get into its own little niche market, put its own little marketing spin to it because, it's got the McMahon bucks on it, and kind of move forward. But it's interesting that the AAF, after all that, and, give kudos and credit where it's due, like, there was hype for AAF games. I mean, I saw it on social media. But it's obviously hard to live with, and people just jones for football. And as gambling becomes more and more accessible, more and more legal, and you're able to put $5, $10, $50, $100 here or there. But it's just interesting that their whole concept, their whole business model was to partner up with the NFL and be a feeder system, and they never did it. They never even got close to it. Well, maybe they did, but not close enough where, maybe it was close enough where you start a league, but how are you going to start a league and expect to get, you couldn't even get to the end of your season, and it didn't work out. It's very interesting. I'm fascinated when you see stuff like that. But we do also have some NFL talk. There's some over and under. So according to Chicago's over and under wins total for next season has been set at 9.5, according to CG Technology via ESPN.com. By that measure, the Bears are expected to be the favorites to win the NFC North, as the Packers and Vikings have their wins over and under total set at 9 apiece. The Bears' 9.5 mark is the sixth best in the NFL, trailing the Patriots, Chiefs, Rams, Saints, and Chargers. And here's the whole league before. You have the Patriots at 11 wins, the Chiefs, Rams, and Saints at 10.5. You have the Chargers at 10. You have the Bears, Colts, and Eagles at 9.5. The Browns, the Packers, Steelers, and Vikings at 9. You have the Cowboys, the Falcons, the Ravens, the Seahawks, the Texans, and the Titans at 8.5. How about the Niners, the Jaguars, and the Panthers at 8? The Broncos at 7, the Jets at 7, the Lions at 7. You have the Bengals, the Bills, the Buccaneers, the Giants, the Raiders, and the Washington Redskins at 6. And with 5 wins, the Cardinals and Dolphins. It's interesting to have the Bears over at 9.5 wins. I think that comes from, obviously, roster-wise, probably they're anywhere from 6 to 11 wins. That's the NFL, right? Like, that's the window. They can be as bad as 6 wins and just not get lucky this year, get hurt. and not have the same type of health, and things just don't work out, people figure out your system, they can be as bad as 6 wins. They can be as good as 11 wins. Like that's the number. But as a betting person, 9.5, that's just to get your money. That's just to get the fan base to bet on them. Because if I say, hey, the Bears are about a 9.5 win team, the Bears meatball, no, the Bears are going to go 13-3, my friend. They're going straight through the Super Bowl, and they're going to win 47-0. Bears, obviously that's how they're going to make their money. These Sharks are making their money that way. 9.5 is an interesting number. It's an interesting number. I mean, I guess the big thing would be is how much do you trust the division if it got that much better, right? I think the division is pretty interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what the Packers do with Aaron Rodgers kind of having that pressure on him now. It's like, we got rid of McCarthy. It's on you now. It's going to be interesting to see that they don't have a lot of the same guys on their squad. The Bears obviously having that trade with Jordan Howard. What are they going to do with the draft, not having a pick to the 3rd round? So I think there's definitely something to the 9.5. But I also want to take a quick look. Why don't we look at a couple of these other teams that maybe we can make some money on? I really like the Browns at 9 wins. Although if you're also on Twitter, the Browns got to the final as a fan base in the March Madness, the thing that the Fox NFL account is doing, beating the Bears. So the Browns are on the S list now. But how about the Colts at 9.5? That's interesting. They had all that money this offseason and they didn't spend any, so that's a little disappointing. I like the Chargers at 10. I think that's too much. I think 10 wins for almost any team is too much. The Patriots at 11, even post Gronkowski. But the 49ers at 8 wins, getting their quarterback back, I think that's an interesting bet. You could go over on that, make a couple bucks. And there's always that first to worst team and the worst to first. That always ends up being the case. But there are some interesting money bets that you can make there. I definitely do like San Francisco at that win over and under total. The Cleveland one is really interesting at 9, but the Vikings at 9. I think the Steelers at 9. That's trying to get your money. But the Colts at 9.5. That's like I said, I kind of like that number. The Chiefs, Rams, and Saints. That's just too much. Again, the point is somebody between the Chiefs, the Rams, the Saints, the Patriots, the Bears. Somebody's going to take a step back. I mean, it just happens in football all the time. I'm just not too sure which of those teams. I mean, I'm a Bears fan, but it's a tough division, Minnesota and Green Bay. But San Francisco, the one I really like the most in that little group right there. If you want to make a couple bucks, but why don't we also take a quick look before we get to the main event of John Oliver's thoughts on the WWE situation? We went to NBA Take-A-Thon today, and we found where everybody stands as of right now here on April 2nd, 2019, before or while the games are in progress, and you see where the Knicks are, who actually beat the Bulls last night, and the Windy City Bulls that are pretending to be the Chicago Bulls, as half their team is already on the IR. But, it's interesting that as the NCAA March Madness tournaments wraps up, and we kind of have an idea that's Ja Morant and Cam Reddish, RJ Barrett, Zion Williamson, who are kind of going to be the head guys leading into this draft. I actually had a conversation with WSCR 670, the Scores host of No Zones, the executive producer of the Lawrence Holmes Show, Tony Gilon, and we talked a little bit about it. Where would the Bulls go? I had one concern the whole time about the Bulls. If they got the number 1 pick, would they outthink themselves and go with Ja Morant over Zion Williamson? And he agrees with me that they can't be that type of person. But I'm telling you guys, it reminds me of that Derrick Rose and Michael Beasley conversation, the Kevin Durant, Greg Oden conversation. I think Zion Williamson's obviously the number 1 pick. But there are going to be dudes in that room that tell you Ja Morant's the number 1 pick. I haven't met them yet. But that front office doesn't seem like the front office that's out of the realm of possibilities. Now, I think just off of pure pressure, anybody who gets the number 1 pick has to take Zion Williamson. But I'm telling you, there's always that one team, always, that thinks that they're smartest in the room. And they get in trouble. And, one last look for all you guys. You see the right now, the Knicks, the Suns, the Cavs, the Bulls are your top 4 teams to get a top 4 draft pick. And obviously, If you're in the top 4, you have a higher percent of getting the number 1 overall pick. Right now, the Knicks have a 14% chance, along with Phoenix and Cleveland, at getting the number 1 overall pick. That's why it's so valuable to be in the top 3. But the Bulls at 4 are at 12.5%, and Atlanta at 10% with the top 5 pick. But, you can see right there, they could get it's fascinating to see how this might play out. And I think if somehow the Knicks are able to get the number 1 pick and they're able to land a Kyrie or they're able to land a Kevin Durant along with Zion, it's fascinating. And like I asked Tony Gill, that you can actually hear the interview on the network right now, what's your starting lineup with Zion Williamson? And how does that change the balance of the entire team's development? Because he obviously becomes the best player on your team, the most important player on your team. Who's the most important player on the Chicago Bulls right now? Is it Zach LaVine? Is it Lauri Markkanen? And, it sucks for Chris Dunn because if the Bulls get the number 2 pick, John Morant's the new starting point guard of this Chicago Bulls team. Does he now become the most important player on your team? Is he your Trae Young? Is he your Steph Curry? Cheers, another sip of coffee. Very fascinating to see what happens as this season finally mercifully comes to an end. And we'll do a whole postseason preview and actually look back at our predictions that we did. Coming down to the wire, maybe my pick of Giannis as MVP will finally break through. But if you missed it on his HBO show, John Oliver did a 23-minute piece on WWE, basically about them being independent contractors, their death rates, their drug policy, just basically a really well-done piece. And I think Alex and I on the Good Brothers will talk about it in the next episode, kind of a little bit to break it down a little bit more. But I wanted to get your opinions on this. I heard Lawrence Holmes actually talk about it today, is how much of sports do you and sports entertainment mix together? Because Ronda Rousey is one of the most popular characters there, and she was obviously one of the most famous combat sports athletes we've ever seen. We've seen Mayweather there. We've seen Shaquille O'Neal there. We've seen Lawrence Taylor there. Like, it's kind of ingrained with both. George Kittle in press conferences talking about, I have to get out of here to go to a wrestling pay-per-view. But John Oliver brings up very interesting points. That's what we'll talk about a little bit, is this idea of independent contractors. Like, somebody like myself. Obviously I could do the podcast here. I do a radio show, and I produce and board up radio shows over for a different company, and I could work for different people. I could work with the UFC. I could work with ESPN. And as an independent contractor, when it comes to things like that, unless I'm a full-time employee, I'm able to do everything. But these wrestlers can't do that. They can't do another wrestling promotion. They work for the WWE, and then they have those no-compete clause. And it's just a very interesting piece that I think both things can be true. I think what John Oliver was saying was very true. There was a high death rate in wrestling, and there was a lot of misstep and responsibility that should go on McMahon's shoulder. But at the same time, it's very easy targeting. And it was a lot of outdated information. And he is a wrestling fan. I got to give him credit for that. John Oliver's a wrestling fan. But all in all, I wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about it here because we will probably break it down a little bit more on the Good Brothers with Alex and myself on the next episode of the Good Brothers as we break down WrestleMania that is happening this weekend. But, it's an interesting topic. I just want to let you guys know about it, my favorite sports friends and family, that check it out. It's John Oliver. He did it on this past HBO. It's on the WWE and the independent contracting situation and all that fun and interesting and scary stuff. But it's a really fascinating take on it, and I highly suggest you guys check it out. John Oliver doing a piece on the WWE and their wellness program, their contracting situation, and just a bunch of other crazy stuff, guys. But I think that's it for us. I think that is the rest of the show. Thank you guys so much for making us a part of your evening. It really means a lot to us. We know you guys are busy in the middle of the week, so for you guys joining us each and every time, it really means the world to us. Make sure you guys are following us all over social media. I'm on Twitter at mmercado2333. You could also follow the network here at Mercado Airwaves on Twitter. I'm on Instagram at instagram.com/MikeMercado2333. Make sure you like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. A huge shout out to Munch Art Design for powering us here on the network. Like them on Facebook at Munch art design. We're on YouTube, youtube.com/Mike Mercado 2333, or look us up at Mercado Airwaves Network. Download, like, review, and share us anywhere you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. You can get our interviews ad-free and before anybody else with athletes and celebrities at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. That is where you can get the interview with Becky Lynch before her huge main event at WrestleMania. We got a bunch of other stuff, guys. We got twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. We're going to be playing, what we got? We got Days Gone. We got Mortal Kombat 11. We got a bunch of cool games that we're going to stream, and you guys can watch us get killed. But definitely a lot of fun, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Check it back. Leave your comments below. We'll start doing a segment on the next episode, on the past episode, of comments that you guys had below. But really means a lot to us that you guys had some time to hang out, chill out, and talk a couple sports with us. But for everybody here at Mercado Airwaves, enjoy the rest of your night. We'll see you on the next episode here on Late Night Sports from the Couch here on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado.